All right, today we've got a video on what I like to call the psychological reality of trading. And this really touches on what being in the trading seat, especially early on in the learning curve, feels like, especially when you take losses, which are inevitable. And so what I wanted to do here is this is my cumulative lifetime P&L. And so as you can see, pretty much the first couple years, really the first 4 years look like pretty much a rounding error. But the reality is it's all a rounding error in the big picture. But day to day, all of this was miserable those first couple years, right? I mean, I assume the red means negative P&L here. Then the green is when I started to go positive and break even, and it was 2 years for me to hit my 100K milestone. So somewhere in here, I obviously can't pinpoint it. I have no idea. But the point I want to make is I met with a trader last week at S&B Capital, and he was a younger, newer trader, and he was expressing to me that he wasn't making the progress he felt like he should be making. And I said, okay, let's dive into your data and see where we're at. And we looked at his trading data, and what he showed me once we started crunching all of the numbers was very, very typical of where someone successful should be on their learning curve for his point on it. And he was a couple years in, and so most of his trading totally washed out. I would say 80% of his trades washed out P&L wise. What didn't wash out was pretty much like his top, like, I don't know, 5 to 8 trading days so far this year made up over 100% of his P&L. And let me give you a shocker. That's actually totally normal, especially early on. And even later on, most of your P&L is super, super asymmetric. Most P&L for a good trader, an elite, a beginner, even a firm comes from a very skewed amount of select few days. And so as we started to look at it, I'm like, dude, like, look at the progress you've made. But he's like, yeah, but day to day it doesn't feel so good. And this is the concept I explained to him that I think will make sense for a lot of you. So this is the one Da Vinci B, who's definitely not me, a different artist's interpretation of what it feels like day to day. So that first chart was zoomed out, and everything looks amazing when we're zoomed out. But what we don't see is the very micro level, right? Most traders will be read 20% to 60% of days. And that 20% is very, very generous. Especially early on in the learning curve, you're probably going to be read 40 to 70% of days. Especially the first year, it's going to be a ton. And I don't think at any point in my career was I that consistent. Even at my really best, minus 2020, which was just super active, but I would say I tended to be positive, maybe 65% of trading days, maybe 50% depending on the month. So here's the reality when you zoom in. When you zoom in, you might have a positive day, but then you go down, like you're really gyrating back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So when you're in the trenches, in the seat, you don't recognize that overall you're slowly starting to trend up when you get to like year 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. But because you're in that seat, what we internalize as humans is we internalize the bad days and how shitty those feel. And so often it doesn't feel like we're making the progress we should be making because we're just, right, again, on 50% of days, we're probably having a bad day where we lost money. But you can't lose the forest for the trees, and you need to keep the big picture in mind. So I know some traders that have struggled through really decent holes, and one thing that has helped them, and what I urge this trader to do, is if you're in, I don't know, year 3, 4, 5, 6, profitable and doing well, have a chart nearby of your really big picture performance. And so often for traders, that big picture is so easy to forget when you're lost in the day-to-day gyrations. And the other thing to keep in mind is on all of those red days and those bad days, it is totally normal. And that is why I advocate you should not be focused on the daily gyrations of your P&L, but instead focus on a chart of your expected value and imagine your little bobblehead moving higher on that chart, right? Forget the day-to-day gyration, but are you increasing the long-term expected value of your trading by improving each day? If you can detach psychologically and emotionally from these gyrations, you will be able to withstand the learning curve and be so much more resilient. And I think this is an important lesson for everybody that it will really help a lot of you recognize this and have that big picture view and be able to maintain that when times are tough, as they inevitably always are. That is part of the job and part of a learning curve. Much like if you were a poker player or a tennis player or any type of athlete, like, I mean, think about batting averages, right? Nobody's ever batting more than even 400% pretty much, right? So on the average at bat, even if you're an amazing hitter, you still feel shitty, right? And if you're playing sports, I don't know, most teams still aren't crushing, and flawless. They're still losing a ton of games. So you can't let those gyrations affect how you overall feel about your progress. You need to zoom out. You need to think about the big picture. And most of all, you need to divorce yourself from this psychologically if it's hurting you. Instead, focusing on, am I improving each day? Is the expected value of my performance improving over the long run? Hope this helps. The one Da Vinci B, out of here.